Not every child grows up to be an artist, but they do grow up with their own creative goals. Some people express their creativity through spreadsheets, some in their baking. Whatever career children eventually pursue, Ben Tremillo, Executive Director at San Anto Cultural Arts, wants them to recognize and exercise their own creativity. Welcome to BexarCast. I'm Randy Langford, and this is BexarCast, a weekly interview with business, political, education, and nonprofit leaders. We're examining the relationships between all four and how each one benefits from the success of the other three. San Anto Cultural Arts Executive Director Ben Tremillo has over 30 years of experience in the arts and culture of San Antonio. He's been the Executive Director with San Anto since 2018 and is a San Antonio native. Ben, thank you for joining me. I appreciate you making some time.
Absolutely, Randy. Thanks for having me.
My pleasure. I went into your background a little bit during the introduction, but I kind of want to just touch base, see how you're doing, because just like everybody else, COVID has disrupted the San Anto plans, just like it's disrupted the Bearfest plans. How are you guys? How have you been affected?
I know you know about San Anto, but just to give you a little bit of background about us, we're a community arts nonprofit here in San Antonio. We've been around since 1993. We have a mission of fostering human and community development through community-based arts. And the way that we've done that is through our programming. We have a mural program with 60 murals throughout the city of San Antonio. We have a community newspaper called El Placazo, and we have over 220 issues of El Placazo written by members of the community for members of the community. And then we also have an after-school arts program. And that program, we serve kids ages 7 to 18, teaching them the basics of art history, art theory.
Right.
And almost all of those programs, all of the programs rely on, one-on-one contact, face-to-face contact, groups coming together. So it has been kind of a change for us, a big change to adapt to this. No one was expecting this, and so when it hit, we kind of had to adjust how we were doing our programming. And so we fully embraced the online world. All of our after-school arts programming, we created videos for youth so that they could have tutorials online on our social media and through YouTube. We also started to do a podcast. Our newspaper had turned from a actual paper newspaper into a podcast where we would talk to community members and talk to artists. And so that we have as well online.
Sounds familiar.
Yeah, you guys are doing a podcast too. You guys are well ahead of the curve on that. So some of the challenges with that and just having to put that together. We're figuring that out ourselves.
Right.
And then our mural program, like this has been one of the bigger challenges for us, is trying to figure out what to do with our mural program because, people aren't coming together for community meetings or painting together anymore. So what we've elected to do with that is still working with artists, still paying artists. What we've started to do is work on a film series so that artists can still create work for community, but rather than using murals as their medium, they're going to be using film.
Okay.
So it's still about storytelling. All of our murals tell a story, so it's still about storytelling, but just creating short art movies, short art films from local artists.
Right. Oh, that's interesting. That's the creative use of what you have available, the resources you have available.
Yeah. We still want to be able to pay artists and work with community. So trying to figure that out, has been interesting. We had a summer camp. We hadn't really utilized Zoom the way you have, but for our summer camp, we went ahead and started using Zoom classes to meet with youth, with kids, so that we can have an hour or two summer camps. And that worked out really well. We had kids, engaged in what we were doing and the work we were creating with them. We were able to use money from HEB, who sponsored our summer camp, to buy art kits for the kids. So that every kid had the same art kit. So they weren't working from different materials, right? Whatever they could find. they were all working with the same kits. Our teaching artists had the same kit as well. So everyone was doing the same kind of work.
Mm-hmm.
We had a young summer camp for kids, and we also had an older kids camp that was a comic book camp. So we combined those two. So now we're looking at our after school program through that lens, and we're looking to purchase materials for kids so that they all are working from the same space, from the same place, and just continuing Zoom programming in the fall and spring of next year.
Well, that's one of the reasons I'm particularly fond of San Anto Cultural Arts, is because it's like BexarCast in a lot of ways. We have very similar interests. The after school program, the after school arts program that you're talking about, is more hands-on than what we do at BexarCast, but the goal seems to be very similar: to give students an opportunity to express themselves while learning real-world skills. And BexarCast started out as a way for high schoolers to learn more about media production, but I've had teachers tell me that their students are getting more than that. They're learning creativity, communications, critical thinking, collaboration, all that stuff.
Yeah.
How important are those lessons? What are those lessons going to mean to these young people as they go out into the someday post-COVID world?
Yeah, Randy, you touched on something really, really important there. I think that we use the after school arts program as a way for kids. Some kids are going to want to grow up to be artists,
Sure.
And so we want to give them those skills. We want to get them started on the right foot and have them in contact with working artists, people who do this for a living, so they can understand, what that means to be a working artist. But some kids, they just want to be creative. They just want to do some painting. They want to do some creative work. And so those skills that they pick up, the ideas that you put together, the creativity, the communication, the working as a team, those are all those skills that they're picking up as well. So they don't have to grow up to be an artist. They can take those skills to do whatever they want to do. They could be lawyers, doctors, they can grow up to be administrators if that's something they want to do.
And that's a very good point that you make. Is one of the reasons that we built BexarCast the way we did, the way we designed it, is to engage high school students with nonprofit organizations, was to get them an inside look at what a nonprofit organization is like. Because what we found is a lot of high school kids, I was really surprised at this, a lot of high school kids think everybody that works at a nonprofit is a volunteer.
Right.
So they don't realize there are careers. You could be an accountant at San Anto, or you could be a mechanic at the food bank. There's lots of ways to engage. So we wanted them to get that opportunity. And like you say, most of the kids in the festival are not going to become artists. They're probably not going to go to work for nonprofit organizations, but they're going to learn skills that are applicable anywhere.
Exactly. I'm an artist myself. I'm a writer. I started writing when I was 13 years old, and so I know how important those skills are. Having written for so long, and when I finally wanted to get into the nonprofit world, that's one of those skills that people need to have, is being able to write, to think creatively, to think passionately about their work. And so for me and my work, all the writing that I did from when I was 13 years old, all that bad poetry, I've been able to manage it in a way that I can carry that with me now, and I can write emails, grants. I can do a lot of thinking on paper and on screen, so that it's a way for us to communicate the work that we do with the broader world. And so learning art, learning writing, filmmaking, whatever it is, like those aren't skills that are, to me, they're not useless at all. Those are really important, critical skills that people and youth can carry with them for the rest of their life. I know, as a 13-year-old, I had no idea that it would lead to this for me.
Right.
But it's one of those things that I'm very happy to have participated in.
Well, and another aspect that is really important to me about what you're doing is the cultural part of San Anto Cultural Arts. Let's talk about why that's important. What are these young people that are engaged in your program? What are they learning about their community and their culture beyond just skill set? They're learning where they come from.
Yeah, that's a big part of who we are, and I think you put it together really well. Community and culture, they're almost interchangeable. They're kind of the same thing. So And the way we engage with community really speaks to culture. It's all about storytelling for us. Whatever we're doing, whether it's murals, working with kids, writing the newspaper, the podcast, all those stories that we get from community, those speak to the culture of San Antonio, culture of
Absolutely.
the West Side, culture of the South Side, just the culture of the city itself. And so
Right.
I think that's one of those things that you have to have connection with community in order to talk about the culture. And so we do that on our work. I would like to say on a daily basis. It's a little harder now to do it on a
Yeah.
daily basis, but we used to have community meetings around our murals to talk about what
Sure.
was important to community, to talk about that cultural aspect of it, to hear how they wanted to see those murals reflect who they are, who their neighbors are, the stories of their neighborhood. Same thing with our newspaper. Hearing those sort of stories, those positive images coming from community members is important, and that's a way of connecting us to our culture, a way of keeping the culture alive, right,
Right.
through those stories. And I think that's the most important part of our work is having an outlet for those stories, either through our newspaper, our youth,
Hmm.
or through our muralism.
Right. Right. And the intergenerational connection is
Right.
also something you guys are very good at. That it's not one of the challenges we have with Bearfest is it's students working with students. So we put them in that position where they're working with adults. That you're going to tell the story of this nonprofit organization, but to tell that story, you have to learn it. So you're going to be dealing with the adults who are going to tell you that story, but you guys do it in a much more hands-on, personal way, where the kids and the adults are shoulder to shoulder, making the plan, creating what they're going to do. And that leads me into the changes that are going on in the world of nonprofits. Um, we talked about where we give kids a chance to see what working in the nonprofit world is like, but that world is changing. I'd like your take on what the future looks like for nonprofits. Does that interaction with nonprofit organizations mean that teenagers of today that you're working with and I'm working with, they're going to be the leaders of society one of these days? Are they going to approach community service differently than people generations before them?
You know, it, I have no idea right now. I think the longer that this crisis lasts, I think it's going to have more and more of an effect. If we're able to
Yeah.
get out of this sooner rather than later, I think like people will remember this and sort of use it as an impetus to do more. But
Right.
if it lasts a long time and we're sort of cut off from each other, I think it's going to have a really profound change in how we do that work and how youth think about that work. I think that regardless of how long this lasts, I think a lot more of what you're going to see from art nonprofits and maybe museums and just art-based sort of organizations is that a lot of it will be geared more online, creating
Oh
content
yeah.
for people to kind of see from their homes. The way we're thinking about things is how people can see things on their phones, interact with art in that way. Uh, um, a lot of our community might not have access to internet or a laptop, but just about everybody has a phone that they can,
Right.
sort of use. So we want to create work that people can just have with them in their pocket,
Sure.
and readily available all the time. So I think for youth and how they interact with community is going to be through those means. I think that's going to be
Hmm.
more of what you're going to see from nonprofits, and I think that's more of what you're going to see from individuals too. And artists are going to start looking at how they do that work, sort of digitally or virtually, and sort of just having a more online world. I know for us, when this is over, we still want to do the work that we had been doing with murals and newspapers and
Right.
one-on-one, but all of our online work, we're going to keep doing and maybe enhance that and really start building on that because um, I don't know, people may be a little reticent to go out, for a
Yeah.
while, to really be in large groups and to do those sort of things, even
Right.
once this is figured out. But I think that we need to be able to reach people through those means as well.
And the nonprofits that you and I are operating today are very different than the nonprofits our parents were engaged with 20, 30 years ago. So that it's only reasonable that the nonprofits of the future are going to evolve from where we are today. And this kind of interaction, this online virtual meeting kind of stuff is going to happen more and more often and become more and more essential to,
Yeah.
to the operations. I absolutely agree. And the young people, it always amazes me with BearFest, the technology that the students engage in. Yeah, I got this. What's the big deal? It's a camera. I carry a media company around in my pocket. So
Right.
they are absolutely fearless as far as the technology is concerned. So yeah, I think we're okay. I think we got a good future.
Yeah, like you touched on, the access is amazing for kids. They have, like you said, the power of a media company in their back pocket.
And they're not
So
afraid
many
to
things.
use it.
Yeah, yeah. You can take video, you can take audio. There's so many different things you can do on a phone, and it's a powerful piece of equipment. And we've had to do some catching up because we've talked about doing online work for a long time, but with this, like we really jumped into it and really wanted to run with it. So we've been learning on the fly. We've been building the plane as we're flying it, so to speak. So this
Yeah,
is
I hear you. When
yeah.
the very first year we had BearFest back in 2017, I use that analogy every day. We're building the plane as we're rolling down the runway, and it's going to take off if we're
Yeah,
ready or not. And
yeah,
so, yeah, we got to be
regardless.
ready. All right. Well,
Exactly.
Ben, thank you. I appreciate your time. I appreciate your insight and your leadership, and thanks for what you do in the community and for these kids. Obviously have a big soft spot for kids, and I salute anybody who's engaged in trying to help them find their way. Good for you.
Thank you, Randy. Thanks so much for all the work you do too. BearFest is amazing, and we're happy to have participated a couple of years ago. It was
You
really
guys
amazing
have been
for
in
us.
it, yeah. I'm going to overlay that video over this, and people get to see
Excellent.
what you're all about.
Yeah, Stacey did a great job. So thanks so much, and we love working with you guys. So anytime, Randy, anytime
My
you want to
pleasure.
talk.
Thank you so much, Ben. We'll see you soon.
All
Hopefully
right.
face to face. We'll get to be
Yeah, that'd be
have a cup of
nice.
coffee.
Yeah, exactly.
Take care.
Bye.